Individual persecution had not stopped the message. Bilal had survived the stone. Amr had survived the iron and the sand. Sumaya had not survived at all, but her death had not silenced anyone either. Quraysh needed a different weapon, and that weapon required attacking not individuals, but an entire clan at once. What forced their hand was not the message growing louder. It was the message reaching two men Quraysh had never expected to lose. Hamzah, the Prophet's own uncle, returned from a hunting trip to learn that Abu Jahl had insulted his nephew at the Kabah. He went straight to Abu Jahl, struck him with his bow, and declared, in front of everyone present, that he too now followed Muhammad. One of the most feared fighters in Mecca had just placed himself on the other side of the line. Not long after, following the migration of believers to Abyssinia, Umar ibn al-Khattab, a man Quraysh had once trusted to deal with the Prophet permanently, embraced the very faith he had set out to destroy. The primary sources are direct about what this meant. When all of these things happened, Tabari records, Quraysh gathered together to confer. Ibn Hisham describes the same moment as a series of events that left Quraysh baffled, unable to see a path forward through individual pressure alone. The Muslims were no longer only the weak and the unprotected. They now stood behind two of the most formidable men in the city. Quraysh concluded they had no alternative left but to attack the one thing that had protected Muhammad from the very beginning, his own clan. They drew up a formal contract. A man named Mansur ibn Ikrimah was given the task of writing it, and tradition holds that his hand withered afterward for the part he played in putting it to paper. Whatever befell the scribe, the words themselves were plain enough. No one would marry into Banu Hashim or Banu al-Muttalib, or give them their own daughters in marriage. No one would buy from them or sell to them anything at all. There would be no contact of any kind until they handed Muhammad over to be killed. To make the pact as binding as anything could be made in that world, they did not simply agree to it among themselves. They hung the document on the wall inside the Kabah itself, so that the very structure built for the worship of one God now carried, on its own walls, a contract aimed at starving his messenger into surrender. Every clan of Quraysh stood behind it, with one exception. Abu Lahab, already estranged from his own nephew since the morning at Safa, sided against his own blood and stood with the boycott rather than with Banu Hashim. Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib, Muslim and non-Muslim members alike, withdrew together into a narrow mountain pass on the edge of the city. It came to be known as Shi'b Abi Talib. For close to 3 years, by most accounts, though some sources give the range as 2 to 3, the clans lived sealed off from the rest of Mecca. Food could only be bought during the sacred months, when fighting and economic warfare were traditionally suspended even by enemies, and even then Quraysh pressed merchants to raise their prices high enough to strip away whatever little wealth Banu Hashim still had. The Prophet, Abu Talib, and Khadijah lost what material wealth they had once held. The sources describe the clan, by the end, as exhausted in a way that went beyond simple hunger. Abu Talib never stopped fearing for his nephew's life specifically. He kept 40 men guarding the pass, and more than once had the Prophet quietly change where he slept at night, sometimes putting his own son Ali in the Prophet's usual place, so that anyone watching the camp from outside would not know which bed actually held him. This was not abstract suffering described from a distance. It was a hungry child, a starving elder, a wealthy merchant's family reduced to waiting for the sacred months just to be allowed to buy bread, enforced by their own city, their own former neighbors, their own extended family in many cases, because of one man's refusal to hand over his nephew. Not every Qurayshi accepted the boycott as righteous, even among those who had not accepted Islam. Hakim ibn Hizam was Khadijah's own nephew, the son of her brother Hizam. One night he tried to bring wheat to his aunt in the pass. Abu Jahl caught him in the act and moved to stop him by force. Another man, Abu al-Bakhtari, who held no faith in the new message at all, intervened on the spot, struck Abu Jahl with the jawbone of a camel hard enough to split his head open, and let the food through anyway. A man who did not believe a word of the Prophet's message was still willing to break another man's skull rather than watch a family starve. Hisham ibn Amr, a respected and wealthy man among Quraysh, found his own quieter method. Night after night, he loaded a camel with food and clothing, walked it to the mouth of the pass, and struck it so it ran the rest of the way in alone, no man's hand visibly involved, so that whoever was watching could never quite prove who had sent it. Inside the pass, Ali himself would sometimes slip out under cover of darkness, searching for whatever food could be found, and bring it back to the people sheltering there. None of these men were forced to care. Tribal blood did not obligate Hakim to risk Abu Jahl's wrath, and no faith bound Abu al-Bakhtari to anyone inside that pass. They did it anyway because watching people starve, even people on the other side of a line they themselves had drawn, was more than some of them could stomach. The boycott ended through what the Prophet himself said, and what was found exactly as he said it. He told Abu Talib that Allah had sent termites into the Kabah to consume the boycott document, eating away every word of it except one phrase left untouched, Bismika Allahumma. In your name, O Allah, the very words with which the unjust contract had by old custom begun. A man named Hisham ibn Amr, the same man who had been quietly feeding the camel into the pass at night, organized a secret meeting at a place called Al-Hajjan. 4 others joined him: Zuhair ibn Abi Umayyah, al-Muttalib ibn Adi, Abu al-Bakhtari, and Zama ibn al-Aswad. The next morning at the Kabah, Zuhair stood before the assembled Quraysh and spoke against the boycott openly, while Abu Jahl objected. One after another, the other 4 stood and added their voices until the opposition could no longer hold. When al-Muttalib went to the wall of the Kabah to tear the document down, he found it already eaten through, exactly as the Prophet had described it, before anyone had touched it. If you want to see what happened in Makkah once Banu Hashim finally walked out of that pass, subscribe, like, and share before the next chapter. Banu Hashim returned to Makkah in roughly the 10th year of the mission, alive, but not unscathed, and not for long left in peace. The siege had been broken by termites no one controlled, and by 5 men who owed the besieged nothing and helped anyway. What it could not break was the thing it had been built to break in the first place. Within that same difficult year, 2 losses were coming that would test the Prophet more deeply than 3 years in a mountain pass ever had.